call the meeting to order at 5:08. And we'll do a report on our closed session. And there's a couple of them here I have to read. I'll just do the whole thing, I think, Mark. Item A, we did have a conference with legal counsel. Item B, we approved a classified leave of absence with unanimous vote. And items D and E, I'm tasked with reading this section here. Resolution number 2019/20-6, motioned by Mr. Chavez, seconded by Mrs. Nunez, to adopt a resolution to release temporary certificated employees and authorize the superintendent, their designee, to notify the employees on attachment A that will be released on February 29th, 2020 and December 21st, 2019. There are 4 A's and 1 absent. By roll call vote. Also, motion with resolution 2019/20-7. This is a motion by trustee King, seconded by trustee Chavez, to adopt a resolution to release temporary certificated employees and authorize the district or his or her designee to notify the employees listed on attachment A that they will be released at the end of the current school year. The vote was 4 ayes by roll call vote and 1 absent. That concludes our closed session. And moving forward with the, I'm going to ask Mr. Chavez to lead us in flag salute. Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a special order of business we don't have on here just yet. Is that right? Or is it here?
No, we do.
We do have
We
it.
do? Okay, very good.
Come on up. Mom, you should come up too.
What?
Yeah, what?
So,
You want me to take
it's right here is fine. It's not often you get to do this, but this is one of our senior scholars. David Cash is a senior at Willits High School. He took the ACT test. ACT is graded 1 to 36, being a perfect score. She got a 33 on her ACT, which puts her in the top 2% in the nation. As far as I know, I've not seen that since I've been here. And that is a stellar accomplishment. And there's lots of things you need to know about that. What it means to colleges is everybody in the nation takes the same test. And when she took it, she's in the top 2%. So colleges go, oh, ooh, that's financial aid money there. She hasn't decided, but I'll let you tell them. Where are you thinking about going?
I want to go to Caltech. But I don't know if I can get in.
Probably. I'm pretty optimistic about that too.
Yeah, well, Caltech is full of people like that. But the good thing about that is, number one, she wants to go to a good school. Financial aid's going to come her way. These are scores. Back in Michigan, every student takes the ACT. It's the state test, so I know tons about it. The rule of thumb is if you get a 30 or better, the financial aid offices help you out. At 33, you inevitably are going to get that. And so she's going to have a lot of choice. She's going to get to pick instead of wait to see where she gets accepted, because she'll probably have lots of offers. Wherever she applies, she's going to get in.
So if we're looking at Caltech, what kind of a major?
Mechanical engineering or aerospace.
Awesome.
Cool.
And we're super proud. And she's very quiet too, because I had to find this out by accident. I went into our ACT data because, hey, we can finally get into our ACT data. And I looked at it, I clicked that, and I went, what? And so I called Mr. Colbeck, I go, did you see the ACT score? No, I didn't see it. I said, oh, you got to see this ACT score. But we're super proud of you. You've done a great job. You worked hard. She doesn't know valedictorian, salutatorian yet, but she's still in the race. So she's made it to the last round of those races. And wherever that ends up, it just ends up. It's not about GPA, it's what you do. And you've really done a great job. And we wanted to recognize you, and I'd like Alex to come up and be the photo op. He's very photogenic.
You too.
Mom, you need to take
We're-
a bow also for raising
Yes,
such a
Mom needs to take a
wonderful
bow, and
child.
on top of our employees.
Let's sneak around here.
Java's response was, all I did was take a test.
Well, you did it
In
well.
front of the
You
podium?
need to go in front of the
In
podium.
front of the podium?
I was high to high.
Sorry.
So she. Congratulations.
You look at her first, and then you can look at me.
And then
Awesome, thank
they
you.
have to change clothes and
Thank
change
you.
their faces.
Well, we just want some eyeballs, you know.
Thank you for coming.
Nice job.
Your sentence is up for school. Thank you.
Let's go around. People are doing well. Let's see. We don't have our folks from WHF Athletics here just yet, so we'll move on to item 9 and catch those guys when they show up. Item A, advisement of organizational meeting, December 11th.
Jesus. I don't know why my phone is doing that.
Maria, is that you singing again?
I like that.
Name that musical.
Did you turn on
No.
your Spotify?
I'm leaving it in, by the way.
I'm sorry. It's a cool song.
At least it wasn't like heavy metal or anything.
No, it's Irving Berlin.
There you go.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe item A is nothing more than a reminder that we will be selecting officers again for next year at the board level.
Right, that is your annual organizational meeting.
Okay. Item B, our census report, Mark. Looks like our enrollment's up.
Yep. Yeah, our enrollment is up. It's not dramatic. It's not, I mean, it's always better to be up than down. I think we're doing well in our buildings and we're attracting the right people. We have Sherwood's full, and you know that's a good thing. Our buildings are pretty full. We're full in the independent study. So we're at the point where we have pretty good numbers in all of those programs.
What happened to first grade?
Well, it just kind of rolls that way sometimes.
Well, you have to look at it's a cohort trend,
Yeah.
so.
Right. And generally speaking, if you have a big kindergarten, you're likely to have a small first grade to follow. Or if you have a big first grade, you probably have a small kindergarten the next year.
Okay.
And it's just nature. Yeah, it does create some goofiness. We go from 4 teachers at a grade level to 7. Yeah, so,
Yeah, well, that's obviously why.
yeah, but it's good news. We're not down, we're up, and I'm pleased about that. And that number can't be big enough. Yeah.
I have a question about the 88 at Sanhedrin. Is that part of the independent study kids too?
It's not the elementary independent study.
No, but it's like the high school?
It is the high
independent-
school's independent
Oh,
study.
okay, and they're just running through Sanhedrin, isn't that what you said once before?
Right, it's Sanhedrin, and it also includes the students in our ED program here at the high school. I think there's 8 of them, or 9 of them.
Oh, okay.
because they are, part of their IEP is to be in a program that has less credits and career-oriented.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Kramer's class and independent study are run through Sanhedrin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the rest of it is the students.
Yeah.
It does not include independent study K-8. K-8 independent study, which I believe there's only 4 of, are in Sherwood's number.
Oh, okay.
Sherwood is our only K-8 building. And so we run their numbers through Sherwood because they could be anywhere through K or 8.
Oh, okay.
And so as an independent study student, we wouldn't have to move them from Brookside to Gloucester to Bechtel and all that. So we run them through Sherwood.
Okay. Any more questions on the census? Okay, moving on. Item C, facility inspection tool reports.
You have they're called the FIT reports. And I had Steve Turner from the county come and do our FIT report for 2 reasons. One is he has a much better eye than a principal would have of their building. He also has the comparison of other districts that he looks at. And the FIT reports really go through and say, what's your building like? What's good, bad, ugly, great? What do you got to fix? That kind of stuff. And so Steve went through all of our sites. And I felt it was important before we talk about a plan to fix those sites that we have an outside opinion of what the sites are like from somebody who has his perspective. He doesn't have any dog in the fight and he doesn't benefit by anything. But our FIT reports show exactly what we know they were going to show. We need to do lots of repair. We have lots of things that need to be addressed. And he hit on pretty much all of them. Now, I will tell you that is not a detailed report in. He doesn't go down and look at the plumbing and say this needs to be upgraded. He does a walk-through look at things. He's not doing an inspection of every detail. He doesn't open up every fuse box and say, is this wired correctly? Because if he did, it would be way longer. But I wanted you to have those because I think it's important. They go along with what we're talking about trying to upgrade and fix facilities.
I'd like to point out that, for example, I believe the best FIT report we got was for Sherwood School. And when we take a look at something like Brookside Elementary, there's an interesting scale that describes where things are. For example, 0 to 74.99% of the scoring, if you will, is considered poor. 75% to 89% is considered fair. 90 to 98 is considered good, and 99 to 100 is considered exemplary. Interestingly, if we take a look at Brookside Elementary scored 75.88%, which is basically 0.89% high enough to be in the fair category, less than 1% lower, and it would have been in the poor category, and it's described as school facilities are in poor conditions. Deficiencies of various degrees have been noted throughout the site. Major repairs and maintenance are necessary throughout campus. That's 4. It's considered fair, and that's listed as the school is not in good repair. Some deficiencies noted are critical and or widespread. Repairs and or additional maintenance are necessary in several areas of the school site. Every one of our school sites was considered fair, with the exception of Sherwood. And that's, quite frankly, it's embarrassing, it's frustrating, it's unfortunate, but we hope we have an opportunity to make some changes.
Sherwood was good because I'm a principal. No.
It's nice that we have, maybe we should move you down here.
The issue with Sherwood is, to be very clear, there are 3 modular classrooms that have been fixed and repaired over the last 2 years pretty significantly, and one of them is new. And so, I would say if you were just comparing school office buildings, Sherwood's at the end of that thing, but their classrooms is what they're really concerned about, and their classrooms are in working order.
So when I look at these numbers, and I know the age of our buildings, what I see is how hard personnel works to keep our buildings functioning as well as they are. I mean, all these things, cleanliness and electrical and safety and structural. I mean, people, our maintenance people are working really hard to keep our buildings up to the best of that they can. So, and I really see that in these numbers. So.
Yeah. And it's about being code compliant. For example, in restrooms, there's ADA compliance. There's all kinds of stuff that these buildings were built before a lot of that went in. But every time you touch them, you've got to get to that standard. And it's pretty problematic.
When he was marking electrical, was there something, an overall problem throughout the district? There were a lot of electricals marked.
Oh, yeah.
Along with wall structure also, but that's age. Is that just?
Well, for example, if I go to Bechtel, to a classroom, I'm trying to think, are there 3 plugs in the room?
Two.
2. Yeah, there are 2 electrical outlets in a classroom at Bechtel with kids who are one-to-one in computers.
That's problematic.
Yeah. And what happens is the daisy chain of surge bar to surge bar to surge bar. And what happens is, poof, there goes the breaker. And you can't blame the teachers, you can't blame the kids. It just doesn't have the wiring it needs. Well, if you only have two outlets in the room, that's what your system's designed for. So the entire main breaker box at Bechtel needs to be dismantled. I mean, to really fix the power at Bechtel, you have to literally redo the entire wiring structure. The same thing is true at Brookside. The same thing is somewhat true at the high school, except, remember, the high school has this facility, some portable classrooms that actually are upgrades. The worst wiring scenario is in the main building of the high school. But again, that's not something, first of all, our guys are not certified electricians. So what happens is we do a lot of work, we get it prepped, and then we come and they okay it, they give us the thumbs up. But the kind of work we're talking about is not something that our maintenance guys can do, because you're going to have to hire a certified, state-qualified electrician. Now, could we help them with the process? Yes. But to get the thumbs up of approval, it has to be a state-approved, certified electrician that's going to do that. And again, people don't like to see that stuff when you talk about repairs of buildings, because you could walk into a classroom and we just spent $7,000 in that room fixing the electrical. Well, you'll never know that. It's not, it's invisible. It's like plumbing and electrical and heat are invisible. You only know when they're not there.
So when it comes to interior surfaces, they're talking about rain leaks or, the stains and stuff, or just the...
All of that.
All of that it needs painting, that tiles are falling. I mean, some of it explains it,
Mhm.
but I just was curious. It just seemed like it was a lot of stuff that maintenance is skilled enough to do.
Well, I'll give you an example, and I'll pick on Bechtel tonight, just because Maria's here. If I go into a Bechtel classroom, when they say interior surfaces, we have a curtain in some of the rooms where it's still surviving. That's like 50 years old, we can't even get parts for. Well, that curtain has a bunch of windows behind it. Those windows aren't thermal-pane windows. They're not tinted windows. So using the projection of a projector, the curtain was there to make it happen. Well, the curtain's bad, the windows let too much light in. Those windows need to be thermal. They need to be tinted to not let the light in. The curtain needs to be gone. It's just the exact same thing as at Brookside. But unfortunately, if you go into that room I can't send Dan into that room and say, okay, Dan, fix this set of windows. Let's just do this set. Because once you touch that set of windows, they all have to go to code. You can't go in and just say, I'm going to fix just these windows over here. Because a room has to be to code. You can't just pick and choose what codes you're going to do and where you're going to do them at. So if you start knocking windows out at Bechtel along that whole stretch, which they all should be knocked out, you have to do them all. Unless there's no students going in the room. So if it was an office, you could leave it alone. But if you start doing that, you got to do them all. And it just goes to interior stuff, ceiling stuff. Again, one of the major issues at the high school will be that main building. It's done through radiated water heat that runs on pipes that goes around the building. Well, that's not how you heat a building anymore. So to heat that, you have to put something outside. Then you're going to have to plumb every single room with vents to bring in hot and cold air. And then have a return of that air out. So those are the issues that you run into. But what Steve's looking at is, he looks at a window that's not way out of code, a curtain that's marginally hung in there because we can't, other than gluing it on, there's no way to keep it up. And the window dressing looks bad, and there's so much light in the room, when the sun hits it the right way, you don't even need the lights on. So, yeah, and there are a lot of things. And when you look at our list, Paula, I'll give you an example. Bechtel's roof, or not Bechtel's, Blosser's roof. Blosser is our newest building. Blosser's on its 31st anniversary this year. Okay, that roof has outlasted its lifetime. Could I have Dan, Bob, and Carl go roof Blosser? I could, but there's nothing else going to get done that summer. It's that big a project. It's going to take a long time.
There are also some regulations in the public contracting code,
Right.
which limit, like, depending on the project cost, you are limited on whether you can use in-house or whether you have to go out and offer it as a public contract. So there's like a threshold, and if the project will be over that threshold, you must go out to bid on it.
And I would tell you, one of the issues is, I like that we call our people maintenance people, because that's what they're doing. They're maintaining what's here. We need to repair what's here. And repair means put a new roof on it. Don't maintain just patching it, Blosser on top of the roof. If you go to Blosser and you look at the roof, it's very obvious. You can see light and dark spots. You can see places where shingles are gone. When somebody pulls a shingle off or it comes off, it's super thin. It's just worn out. It's lasted 30 years. That's pretty good for a roof. But
you're absolutely right. There's a difference between making repairs, building new facilities, and maintenance. And clearly, just maintaining the sites that we have is a daunting task. I get it. Quite frankly, I don't think if you threw 3 or 4 more people at it, you're still not going to catch up. We've seen the list of things that are on the deferred maintenance list, and many of them have little to do with maintenance. They have to do with making major repairs. And that brings us to the next topic on our informational section, which is the bond survey update. And I was fortunate enough to be involved with this essentially from the get-go. But I think Mark's probably got the best detail to add.
And one last thing about this FIT reports, it's about equipment too. So when I use the analogy of our guys roofing that, we don't have all the scaffolding, we don't have all the tools, we don't have all that stuff. I mean, to get the shingles up there, we have a forklift that's probably older than I am. I mean, the parking lots, we don't own a paving machine. So there are things out of the scope of what we could even do. So one of the things we did as a board, we agreed that we would get a survey done. And that survey went out to 300 members in the community. It was very, very professionally done. People were called, people were used, some did it through a link on a website, and they took a random survey of the district, but also a targeted survey. They targeted to make sure they had male, female. They did ethnicity. They did all kinds of free and reduced. Do you have kids in school? Do you not have kids in school? They replicated our data in their sample. And their sample was very favorable to us, looking at it of, should we consider fixing our facilities? And I've said this all along, I don't think anybody in town would say, oh, your facilities are great, you don't need to do anything. Just the opposite. Virtually everybody in town realizes they need to be fixed. It always comes back to the same thing. How much is it going to take to fix them? Who's going to do it? How much does this mean to a taxpayer? Because the only way to fix public facilities is through bonds. And we've had conversations about state funding. State only funds if your building qualifies. And the last time they did a bond, they tagged every single modernization tag was used, with the exception of the high school auditorium, the high school cafeteria, and Blosser, because it wasn't 30 years old yet. So that's what we have, those 3 modernization tags. If we were successful even getting that modernization money, we have to come up with 40% of the bill. Simple math, the roof's $400,000. A $400,000 roof, we gotta come up with 140 grand to do the roof. Well, the only place that 140 grand would be coming from is from our general fund services. And we can't take those kind of hits for a roof. So that's the issue with state money. The state money is 2 years behind, by the way. Even if we qualify, they're 2 years behind in processing those claims. And the governor has to annually bless that group with money based on the revenue and budget he puts out. And it's usually one of the last things they make a decision on. It's kind of like the tail on the dog. If there's some money, we'll throw it a bone and put some money out there for districts to fix. I think it's horrible that the state of California doesn't recognize that they need to help public schools fix and maintain facilities, but they don't. And so we have to do it. And so the survey they did was very well done. Usually when you do one of these surveys, you're looking, are there 50% or more of the people? All our numbers trended very well. We were 68% of the people believed that we needed to fix our facilities. There was support of 68%. They went through an entire process of comparing it to other things. They even asked about the previous bond. And at the end of it, they asked them, are you still supportive knowing these things? And it was a very good turnout. I think from their words, and Alex sat in and listened to the meeting too, is that I think you've more than established a need. I think you've more than established, more than a majority of people are very supportive of this, and you should let the public make a decision. I mean, that was the outcome of the data we got. And personally, I've kind of said this all along. I know we need to ask for this. And regardless of the outcome, my job, and I think you guys' job, is to say, we need this, we'd like to put this out there, give us a yes or no. Because if it's a no, we need to buy a lot of duct tape. I mean, that's what we know. We know what we know, and we can move on. But we're kind of in limbo right now. It's 10 years ago that you had a failed issue. and it didn't fail, it passed, and you fortunately shut it down after only 14 million of the 43. That was a good thing to shut it down. You needed to shut it down. But 10 years later, the facilities didn't get better in the last 10 years. I mean, we've been working hard to maintain them, but the science wing was a major issue in the last bond issue. Well, those rooms are 10 years older, and they need a lot of help. They need more help than we're going to be able to snake out a general fund to polish and paint. They need a whole lot more than paint. So we're in a position where I think we need to ask the community and let them make a decision. I like our plan. I think our plan of asking for a small amount for 3 years, then get another amount. We don't need a massive amount of money to sit on. We need a fund that we can fix and repair stuff that we normally would not be able to deal with. And they recommend, and I would recommend to you, that we use the $40 mark. I think the data tells us there was not a great deal of difference between the asking. I understand people don't want to raise taxes, okay? I get it. I pay taxes too, I don't want them to go up. But as a school superintendent and as board members, part of our task is to maintain these facilities, make them safe and good and up to date. And the only way to do that is through a bond. There's no magic money coming. So that's where I believe we're at. And I know when I first got here, I used the B word. And everybody went, don't say the bond issue. But I've been pretty straightforward from the get-go, is that at some point, this has to come back up on the table. Okay? They're not going to last forever. And my opinion is if we don't address it now, and you hold off and wait more years, your number is going to go higher. There's no question it's going to go higher.
Excuse me.
So that's kind of the whole issue with the bond. I could go through every detail on there, but I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the data they gave you. It's 67, 68% of the people are supportive of the schools getting repaired. I think the data tells you that, at least by their survey, it gives you the data to say this makes sense to ask for. Now, whether it passes or not, that's a whole different story. But that's up to the community. That's not up to the 300 people on the survey. That's not up to you 5 as board members or me. But it is up to the community. I think it's time to ask them yay or nay.
I tend to agree. After sitting through the presentation on the survey results, it was very clear that there appears to be significant support for another bond measure, particularly a bond measure that's structured the way this is. The idea behind this would be the initial bond measure would be sold and the district would receive somewhere in the neighborhood of approximately $4 million. Over the life of the bond, that could be as much as $16 million. However, it'd be that $4 million would be apportioned out over about a 3-year window in between each apportionment. The beauty of that also allows, if there's a significant downturn in the economy, we don't have to actually go and sell the bonds for that next series. In other words, we can not cause more pain in the community if we can avoid it. It has a lot of protections built into it. For example, again, the idea is to spend the money locally. This is also for repair and upgrading and that sort of thing of our facilities, not for building new. It keeps us out of the DSA nightmare where we have to have all this oversight from the state for making repairs. There's a lot of good in the way this is structured that's good for the taxpayer and good for the district. So I agree. The condition we have in our schools is really quite simple, in my opinion. I've said this before, and I think that we are treading water. From a budget standpoint, our district has been treading water with our nose just barely above water for a long time. And if there is a significant downturn in the economy, we're going to be in really, really big trouble. Part of the reason why we're treading water is because we spend so much money on maintenance. To be quite blunt, and there's no secret that we spend a lot of money there. If we can get our facilities improved to a point where we don't have to spend as much money on maintenance, it would help a great deal. And the other point I'm trying to make out here is, if you take a look at our budget, we've been in deficit spending now for 2 years, probably going to be in deficit spending for another year. Hopefully we'll have control of that situation before it actually reaches up and bites us. The point I'm trying to get at here is, because the state has chosen to fund K-12 education the way it has, us receiving about $9,500 per pupil per year, as opposed to what occurs on the East Coast. Many of those states are spending in excess of $20,000 per pupil per year. Again, there's a measure that's trying to be put on the ballot to force the state to fund us at the national average, which would, quite frankly, give us a 25% boost in our budget. That would be huge for us. Is it likely going to occur? Can we wait for that? I would argue no. We need to do something, we need to do something much sooner. I'd like to be able to say I had confidence that that measure would pass and that the state would be able to do something by 2020. But the likelihood of that occurring is really quite low. So from my perspective, I don't see as we have a really good choice other than to ask the community to support another bond measure. The question I would throw out, though, is where does CSEA stand? Where does CTA stand? Will we be able to count on your help?
You can count on WTA to help.
We're in.
Okay.
I haven't polled the members, but it has to happen.
I'll take your word for it.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what's the position of the board? Thoughts?
In my years throughout education, I found the only way you could do anything significant with facilities, whether you're building new or you're repairing major repairs, is through bonds. Because, like was said already, in California, we are just not funded to support our facilities, not sufficiently, and it's ridiculous. So I don't see any other way to take care of the buildings.
I'm supportive of the bond issue because we have to do something, and because our facilities are that old and are in that much of a need, and we would be irresponsible to not go ahead with this with the bond. So,
And my opinion is, it's neither here nor there, but the truth of the matter is, if you take a look at Brookside, Bechtel Grove, and even the facility here at the high school, they're very old. There's a lot of problems here, and quite frankly, there comes a point where you're money far ahead to bring in a bulldozer and start fresh. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking many, many millions of dollars to be able to do something like that. I would argue that Brookside, for example, we can't really do a lot at Brookside because of the lead-based paints that are everywhere. It's really hard to fix that. It's incredibly expensive. Not to mention the fact that all the windows need to be replaced in most of these facilities. Tear out all the windows in all these facilities, and you've practically torn out half the walls. Again, there's a point where it would make more sense to just bulldoze it and start fresh. That's not going to happen here. It's simply not going to happen.
The district can't support it or won't.
Our assessed valuation.
Pass a bond issue
Right.
to pass.
Our assessed valuation in this community would not provide enough money from any bond measure to be able to build one school, much less four, if you will. So the reality is we do have to live with what we've got, and that means we have to repair what we've got. This is the best option that I can see that we can actually get that done.
And so later this evening, we're going to hear about how they're going to calculate the cost and exactly who's being taxed and who's not, and how it's going to be taxed. I mean, currently it sounds like property owners only, which always makes me wonder because a property owner that rents out their property is gonna charge a renter. I mean, you know, that's kind of, in my mind, that's a given. So, and everyone is gonna be voting. I mean, I don't think you're gonna, that people would be selected, this half gets to vote and that doesn't.
No, it's
And
not
there are a
predicated.
lot, I just have a whole lot of questions still. And so I
Well, this part's this part is the informational part, and we'll get to that.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So later, when the people who are come, they'll have those numbers and that kind of stuff?
Well, part of what we have to discuss is we need to have a special meeting, okay? And I need you to look on December 2nd, if December 2nd is a date that is available. Because in order to even make the decision, the right time for us to be on a ballot is the March election. And to be on the March 2020, we have to have it to the county by the end of the week of December, the first week of December. And so what I'm going to do, and it's further down in here, is I'm going to do a contract with the attorney who writes the resolution for the board and does the ballot language. That's their only function. It's a small contract. It's well within board policy for me to do those contracts with them. But we have to have it written correctly. We have to have it written correctly for a resolution and written correctly to vote on, to put on a ballot. So it has to be written correctly. So I will get that done. But in order to meet the timeline, we need to have a meeting. December 2nd would be the best date. It's a Monday. And it can be a single item issue. And so that's where we can have a ton of debate because we're going to be a single item issue. That's a place where community people could come or not come, or support or not support. But for me, it comes back to you got good data. I think you're in a position where you let the community decide.
So 5 o'clock start time.
We can, do you guys have your calendar?
Yeah.
I'm open.
Well, I'm not in the day. Is there a reason why, I mean, if it's a 5 o'clocker, that's perfect, I can do that.
I don't care what time it is.
Oh, okay.
5 o'clock would be fine.
Okay.
Would it be better to push it out to like 5:30 or 6, only to give?
I would rather not. I'd rather stay with 5 because I'm going to have Adam here, the consultant, he's going to be able to answer any financial question you have. I really want him here to do that because that's his role. He was as involved in the survey as I was, and so he knows the survey. And if we do vote to do it, he'll help us with, here's your next step to do. One of the things I'm not interested in doing is what happened before is you had one group who came and kind of did everything. I don't trust that scenario when they work for themselves.
They've legally fixed that, so we can't do that, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so that's why Adam doesn't own anything with the survey. He's not part of that. He wasn't involved with it. He saw the results like we did. Our bond counsel guy that we get to write our stuff up is not affiliated with either of the organizations. The only other piece, if we do ask for it, is communications. Generally, you have a communications person who helps put out the right information for you. That is separate. Again, he doesn't do that function. So I want to be very careful that we don't get caught in the trap of, well, I'm working for myself, because that's not what we want. I think we've taken a good approach to, I like that in 3 years the board could say, economy's bad. We're not going to assess the whole amount. Or the economy's great and property values are skyrocketing. We can drop back down to 30 if we want instead of 40. You control what you assess. So you can make those decisions to control the revenue and the burden on the taxpayer. This isn't a one-time, give me a bunch of money and trust me, a lot of things are gonna happen. There's gonna be a quarter of it come to you, and look what happened. We don't do what we said we were gonna do during that quarter, they're gonna go, yeah, we're not doing these other ones. So there's some community input that's gonna happen.
We ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, so WTA.
Okay, well, there are some very positive things happening with the Willits Teachers Association, the school board, and the district office. Last month, in October, Alex Golds came to one of our executive board meetings and listened in on the meeting and spoke with us afterwards. Yesterday, we met with Mr. Westerberg to talk about issues that teachers are having, and it was an honest, open dialogue, and I'm just really pleased to see these roads being built between the different entities so that we can be productive when it comes to things like bond issues and things that we need to unite over. So, very excited about that. One of the things that we talked about was some teachers working on the calendar for next year, and you gave me the draft, but you didn't give me a timeline.
Well,
When do we want to have that by?
well, sooner than later. I'm already getting a lot of questions about when it is starting next year and all that.
Okay.
But I gave them a calendar as if we did the calendar we have this year, if we did it the next 3 years, what it would play out to. And so I gave that to them. Dan got a set for CSEA. I want input from them. Ultimately, you'll make the decision, but I want input from them of what they want the calendar to look like, because some anomalies hit. Like next year, Halloween is a Saturday. Traditionally, it's been a PD day the day after. Well, it doesn't need to be next year. So that PD day could go anywhere. So every year has its own individual uniquenesses. And so I want them to take a look at what they are. And you've heard me, I'm not vested in calendar. I'm going to be here 6 or more days a week. I don't care. What I really care about is that we have a plan to put a calendar out that everybody can follow. And the state sets the guidelines. We need 180 days. And we have to meet X number of minutes, especially at the high school. And so the calendar plays itself out for me. So that's one of our
So our
issues.
educators really appreciate being able to have input on things like that. It means a great deal to them. One of the things we talked about last month at last board meeting was SBAC results, not getting them in a timely fashion. And we talked about how even if we can't get individual student scores from year to year, but we can get them by school site and grade level. And even then, all we can get is the 1, 2, 3, 4 score, which isn't really meaningful data. And a number of teachers really want to start doing some testing analysis, the score analysis. One of the routes that we have for that in the elementary schools is Acadians. And Mark agreed to do a tracking by student from year to year. And that's going to be some pretty meaningful data, and that's something a number of teachers are volunteering to look at so that maybe we can come up with a more meaningful plan to support growth. Because we are all in agreement that we want 70% or greater at proficiency level. So we're on board with that goal. Realistically, it's going to take some digging trenches and planting boots and getting some work done. So we're working together on that as well. Another item that the teachers are going to be working on is the Schools and Communities First initiative. Right now it's in the legislature waiting for a number to become a proposition. But that has the potential to put $11 billion back into schools and communities. And we're going to be doing signing petitions and promoting that as well, because we need to grab that money however we can find it. And I think that's a positive way that it might happen for our community. Each month we choose Willits Teachers Association chooses a business, and everybody who wears their WTA shirt or jacket and gets a picture taken there enters a drawing. And this month, the business is the Dog House. So you'll be seeing teachers posted on Facebook going to the Dog House and supporting one of our local businesses. Yes, we're in the Dog House, Mark. Yeah, I saw what you were thinking. Okay, and WTA is also planning a holiday party that's going to be at the Willits Center for the Arts. And there's going to be a DJ, and it's going to be catered, and it's a first ever annual holiday party to just kind of build some camaraderie with our teachers.
That's
So
great.
that's what our teachers are up to right now.
Dan?
I'd like to start off by thanking Laura for coming to the meetings. I missed you all this time, and we wish you'd show up more often to grace us with your presence. It's very nice of you. Appreciate that. Classified's going good. I'd like to talk about the power outage if possible. When the power goes out, it's a lot different when people come back to school. Like Monday morning, school's already on, everything's happening. When the power comes on after 5 days, there's a lot of stuff to do. We gotta wake the entire property up, every property. And it's just not like turning a light switch on. It's reprogramming, restarting, moving food, doing all the things that have to be done. There's a lot of work by all the classified staff in order to make that happen. But it does happen with the help of admin and others too. So it's not just a classified issue, but everybody did a good job getting the school woke back up again after 5 days. It was pretty good. We saved a lot of food, I think. We could have lost more.
I'm gonna blow Dan's horn for him because he's not gonna tell you this, but
Now I want to tell
Dan
something first.
rewired so we could generate for our freezers and our refrigerator at the high school. And as a group, everybody came together and moved it there. We didn't lose a single thing over that time.
That's great.
We had probably 50 to 60 grand worth of food that was gonna go bye-bye. And that was a team effort, and it was a huge issue.
And about the food, I would like to confess my sin in public, what I did. I ended up at Bechtel Grove with Mark, and we're emptying out a refrigerator, and he's pushing carts out, and I says, well, where are we gonna put this crap? And he goes, I thought it was all going in the dumpster, okay? And he said, high school. And I said, oh, we're gonna throw it in the high school dumpster, maybe they'll pick up the trash tomorrow or something, right? So as all this stuff's coming out, it's in these tubs. It's not in like boxes, it's in the tubs that they use. So I'm like, well, I can't throw that away, they'll kill me. So I dump it in the box, and I put it in the sink. And I did that for like an hour. And the sink was piled this high, and the boxes were piled this high, and threw them in the truck, and come to find out, Mark threw them in the refrigerator over at the high school. So then there was a pile of dirty dishes that the girls weren't happy with. There was a couple boxes of mixed, whatever you want to call it, that the other girls weren't happy about. When they pulled it out on, Sunday to start cleaning up or something like that. So anyways, I want to know who that asshole was, but it was me. I thought we were throwing it away. So other than that, everything went good. And I think everybody just need to working at stuff and working together and make this whole thing happen.
One of the other really important things that I had custodial maintenance folks were in on like that Monday through Friday. We got a lot of stuff done that's been a long time in waiting. We filled lots of dumpsters, cleaning out all this facility. It was one of the rare opportunities they got to take care of their own stuff instead of somebody else's. And we got a lot done. And they did great work. I mean, you wouldn't even recognize the transportation area, the maintenance building over here. They're all cleaned out and done. We got a lot of outside projects done, punched out a boatload of maintenance tickets and rooms. So for maintenance custodial, it was a super productive time.
Even without power, you can do that?
Even without power.
Hey, I wired my own shop. We had power.
they wired power, so they had a little heat in the maintenance building and a stereo that was pretty loud. But, yeah, they got a ton done. And if you remember those days, by 10 o'clock, it was pretty warm already. By the afternoon, it was really hot. And so we got a ton done, and the maintenance custodian did a great job.
Cool. We're at board comments. Let's start with Spencer.
Wrapping up fall sports season, we've got a team right here. That's pretty much it. We got finals tomorrow. Not really excited about that, especially because we lost a week of time from the power. A lot of review packed into these last few days, but you know what? It could be worse. We actually got kind of lucky on that because that was going to be kind of a short week anyways with the Halloween going on. But that's pretty much it. Just finals, getting the new sports seasons, wrestling started, basketball is getting into gear. Everything's cool.
Thank you. So take a...
Let's pause on me. We should let the students.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mr. Bowles?
Thank you. So take a fancy podium over here. My name is Brian Bowles. I'm the athletic director at Willits High School. And I wanted to take the time to celebrate some really positive accomplishments that have occurred this year with the sports program. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on one thing that I think helped improve it. This year we instilled a new set of rules for academic eligibility. And the new rules stated that if you have below a B in any class, that you are to report to a mandated tutorial after school. And I worked with Mike Colvig and Mr. Westerberg about staffing that with teachers. And the reason I felt that that was an important way to go instead of using the coaches to do it is teachers are there to teach, and they already have the behavior management worked out. They already have a relationship with the student. They are often the teacher that is helping the kid improve in their class. And so about week 3, we started to get kids that dropped out of that A-B range and into the C and D land. And we did a printout, thanks to Amanda Maciel, who's our new assistant to Mr. Colby in the office. She would do a printout for me. I checked grades, and I went around to each team and said, okay, here's where you're at. We were pretty frank about it. And they immediately went to after-school tutoring. Now, for some of them, like the football team, that meant 4 days a week because they play on Friday, and they have 4 days that they are not traveling. For soccer, it meant 2 days a week, and they had a home teacher, which was Trish Silva Brown, that they went to as a team. Once anybody got into that situation, they went as a whole team, whether they had the C's or not, and worked with her on Wednesdays, and then anybody else was on Mondays with another teacher. And I think that that tremendously helped keep our program afloat after the quarter. Last year we had some issues with grades at the quarter, and our athletics suffered from it. And this year we had a net gain in boys soccer of 4 students. We did a practice waiver, which allowed the kids to join the team if the coach agreed to it, and practice with them but not compete. And that way they had a goal to meet, their academic goals. Once they met them at the quarter, they became eligible and they were in shape and they'd been playing with the team. And so we had a net gain, I think, of 4 students on the soccer team. We had a net gain of 1 on the varsity football game. Our team, we didn't lose any, we gained an athlete there. And I think the total for all athletes, start to finish, is a net gain of 3. So overall, we had a positive influence instead of a negative dropout rate on that. And I think as a coach, it's really important to see these kids understand the relationship between athletics and academics. And I feel like this program has really helped them understand that, and also gain a great deal of respect for each other, from the teachers looking at the athletes and the athletes looking back and having a greater appreciation and thankfulness of the teachers that helped them get there. And so that's my push as athletic director, and what I feel has helped these guys get to a positive world. And more importantly, these athletes have put their heart and soul into their sports. They're there every single day, sweating and working their tails off. We have an incredible coaching staff that work tirelessly. They're every day. They're there on Sundays, they're on Saturdays doing game film, figuring out plays, watching other football games, and it just is never ending, and it has been nothing but successful this season. It's turned out we, for the first time in I believe 10 years, are hosting a playoff football game on Friday at 7, and we hosted our home soccer game playoff at 7 last Wednesday that was well attended, and the referees and the coaches from the other team went out of their way to shake my hand and the coach's hand with that soccer game. They said it was like watching and refereeing a college soccer game. And it was a phenomenal game. I watched the whole thing from start to finish in awe. There was not a single second when there wasn't one of our athletes on that soccer ball. There wasn't a time when they set up, and it went to overtime, and it hit a grass ball and had a weird bounce, and it's sudden death overtime, and we lost 1-0 to Credo. And the coach, both coaches, both teams modeled exemplary behavior, and I was so proud to be the athletic director, whether we won or lost that game, with how well they played and their entire season. So I'm really proud, and I would like the varsity soccer team to please stand up. These are all our seniors, I believe, that we're leaving. President and Martin Rodriguez and Dan, please stand too, please. They have worked hard. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for all your efforts. You did a fantastic job.
It was horrible. The ball hit the pipe and went left instead of right.
Yep. Yeah. It was horrible. I did try. You guys you can tell your friends that one on that one. We ride the bus home together, and we listen to a lot of interesting music on the way home. Sometimes on the soccer bus. And at the end of each song, someone says, "Are you crying?" I was crying at the end of that game. So the JV team has moved on to their other sports, and some of them have moved up. There's some freshmen and sophomores, if you'd like to raise your hand there. Gentlemen that are freshmen or sophomore that have moved up for playoffs. Will you gentlemen please move forward? Come on the floor here. So these gentlemen represent our JVs, and now they've moved up to our varsity because we're in playoffs now. We have freshmen and sophomore here. And why don't you stand right here, gentlemen? Look at you and introduce yourself and what position you play really quick. You can start with you, sir.
I'm Jaden. I play slot receiver and linebacker.
I'm Zeke Novo, and I play tackle and nose guard.
I'm Jared Thurman. I play wide receiver.
I'm Trevor Wilson, and I play tackle and DN.
Hunter Cinches, quarterback and safety.
Hold your left hand up, Cinches. Okay, so Cinches played half the year, I think, with a broken arm, by the way, as a quarterback. Fractured at least. He's got a cool glove to prove it. So this is our league pennant. It's our first one of the year. I don't think it's going to be our last one for this group. And I'm really proud of the JVs and the JV coaching staff. Gentlemen, you are up on the wall for all eternity as league champions, JV league champions. And then let's see, I think why don't we have the varsity curl behind the crew right here. I think you're a little bigger line.
How do you want us to do it? Like,
You're just going to have semi right here. Make them feel nervous. Make them feel like they're about to be tackled. Over there. So these young men, literally 5 minutes ago, were on the practice field. I talked to their coach. I talked their coach into getting them here at 6:05. They've been practicing since about 3:20. And they have had nothing but, honestly, a miracle season. They're ultimately almost worst to first this year. That's how much they've changed. And the effort and enthusiasm that these young men have put in is absolutely fantastic. They are absolutely brothers. And if you ask any one of them if they'll do anything for each other, the answer is what?
Yes.
Okay? And I'm really proud of you guys. You're exactly what we expect out of our athletes and our student athletes here at Willits High School, and you're role models for the rest of us. And this is our second playoff game in a row for Willits High School this year. So last Wednesday and now this Friday. And we are competing against El Molino. We are currently seated 3rd in the playoffs. And El Molino, I believe, is seated 5th. Is that correct? 6th. So we're going to have a heck of a game on Friday. And I can't wait to see the scoreboard at the end of the day. All right, you want to do a quick introduction of yourselves? What position, name and position, as fast as you can. Boom, starting with you, Gabe.
Gabriel McGinnis, I play slot receiver and linebacker.
Talon Wyatt, I play cornerback and wide receiver.
Joseph Denier, I play left tackle.
Dylan Longmire, DN and center.
Craig Stewart, I'm fullback and safebacker.
Jacob Schubert, and I play wide receiver and corner.
I'm CJ Powers, I'm slot, defensive line, linebacker, safety, and wide receiver. I'm Eric Colbert, I play wide receiver and defensive back.
I'm Jonathan Chavez, I play receiver and corner.
I'm Hunter Ford, I play right guard and middle linebacker.
I'm Cordero Man, I play fullback and strong safety.
I'm Peach Parker and I play slot back and I'm a defense end.
I'm Casey Brown, I play left guard and D tackle.
Pedro Sanchez, I play left tackle anywhere on the D-line.
I'm Ethan Ferguson and I play center.
I'm Nathan Coleman, I'm the quarterback.
Lawson Andrade, I play D and a tackle. I'm Jacob Arms, I'm a slot back and a free safety.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your practice.
Thanks,
Coach Norberry, can you come forward, please? Coach Matt Marotti. So, there's other coaches that aren't here tonight. Coach Cavender is also part of this squad, and Coach Carr is part of the JV squad who's not here tonight. And Bill Norberry is in the background there where he likes to be. But these coaches have worked tirelessly, and it's a whole new squad that's come through as a coaching staff, and they, both the football team, I would say all teams, were hook, line, and sinker with the program that we put forward. I think, and they really bought into the importance of having an eligible football team at the end of the season, and we have that. And they're going to go kill people on Friday.
Nice.
Good job, guys. Thank you, board, for letting us present to you tonight. You guys appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Continuing on with board comments, thank you, Spencer. Walt?
Well, I went to Brickside coffee morning and then to some of their classes. And I did the same at Blosser for a little social that they had last week and the week before. And other than that, I've been hung up with 100 other things. Also, though, I wanted to remind anyone who is interested that there's an ELAC dinner on Thursday the 21st. And it starts at 5:30 or 6, I don't remember. Show up at 5:30, and they're having a pizza, salad, and dessert dinner and an introductory deal for it's the district's ELAC at Brookside's cafeteria. Melania is kind of spearheading it, and she's been working really hard to take care of that.
Jeannie?
So I continue to volunteer in one of the kindergarten classes and also one of the 5th grade classes. And one of the gifts of that has been I've been able to watch on a weekly basis how unlocking the code is taught. And I learned a lot about unlocking the code, and I can see how hard the teachers are working on this material with the students and really working to improve our basic skills. And I attended, what I've become aware of is that we receive, on a weekly basis, we receive bulletins for Brookside, Blosser, and Bechtel, but we don't receive one from the high school. And so I sort of, since I'm not volunteering at the high school, I'm not really aware of what's going on at the high school. And I myself would really like there to be some weekly communication from the high school as to what's going on in the high school. And I did go to the soccer game against Credo, and I also went to the football game that was held in the afternoon because of the power outage. So, and I did try to go to some of the in-service at Bechtel Grove, but I didn't know what room they were in, and by the time I found them, it was already over. But they gave me a rundown. Maria gave me a rundown, and Mackenzie a rundown as to what they covered. So, but I did try to go, and that's all I can think of right now. And I did want to say about the sports team is it's noticeable how they treat each other, and it's not just that they're playing really hard, but that they're also treating each other well, and it's really noticeable, and and how they treat the team players from the other teams. You know, there's a camaraderie here that's happening. That's not just about sports, just about winning a game. It's also about treating other human beings with consideration, and it's very noticeable.
Okay, and I've been to some of the athletic events, and I have to agree with you, the spirit, the school spirit is really high. That's exciting. Went to Sherwood's festival, and it always amazes me the number of people that attend that event. The cars are lined all up and down that road, which you can barely get by. It's just amazing. But it was very nice. But one thing that really struck me tonight, it's so good to hear WTA, CSCA getting together where things are happening in a positive way. And I kid you not, I got a little teary-eyed just hearing it, because really, if Willits is known, for me, Willits is known for taking care of each other in a family-type atmosphere, and I've never experienced that until I came to this town. And to see it come up again, oh, it just made me feel so good. So thank you for that.
Like all of us are involved in a variety of different ways. I continue to be involved with the CTE program, primarily the wood shop. We got the shaper installed, and it works great. We're still working on a few parts for that, but the CNC router machine is proving to be a challenge. We have it up and running and working, but there's a learning curve that is a little bit daunting, but we will get past it. We're about ready to make that thing and do some cool stuff. I've got some help from several of the students there that are deeply invested in the project as well, so and we're having quite a bit of fun. So we're doing that almost on a daily basis. I spend several hours in the morning in there. Mr. Westerberg tried to kill me a couple weeks ago. He put me about 35 feet up on a... Don't talk about it. Yeah, shouldn't be talked about. Anyway, I tried to remind him that I'm a supportive board member, that he really doesn't want to do this, so he backed off. And
we were negotiating my contract.
But we got the netting over the baseball diamond, so in hopes of trying to salvage a few more baseballs in the future. So we got that project is hopefully done and put to bed, at least for the time being. I agree. Sounds like climate and culture continue to improve in the district. It's an effort on everybody's part to make all that work. I want to say, I also want to say thank you very much to CSEA and all you folks for pushing as hard as you did through the power outage, continuing to get things done. It was a great opportunity to get things cleaned up and more things fixed around here that you can. So, despite the fact that the power was out. So, thank you very, very much. The question I would ask about that is, are we going to get a waiver from the state for some of those days, or?
We're pretty confident those days are going to get waived. As a district, what I did was I made sure that we kept everybody safe. So our classroom paras and those kind of things, if we have to make the days up, they'll essentially have to make them up for free because we've already paid them for. But those folks need to get a consistent paycheck. And I can't let the power outages shortchange them for what they're expecting to have. And so we treat it as keep everybody whole. We'll sort it out based on what the state makes us do. If the state makes us make them up, we'll make them up. If they don't, well, they went +3. They got 3, but that's just the way, I would rather roll the dice and keep everybody whole than say, oh, good, we don't have to pay them, we can save some money today.
At what point
That's
would we
not the point.
At what point would we expect a response from the state?
Well, we would need to bring the application for approval. I expect that we would see that within the next 2 board meetings, most likely. It depends. The last couple of years, the waivers that we've applied for have been for events that impacted a large number of districts. And so the response time from the state has gotten sort of longer each year. And I would expect this to be one of the biggest for the number of people that were impacted statewide by this power outage. So it could really be months before we hear back from the state, unfortunately.
So if they get back to us by the middle of June, it's just fine.
Well, the governor declared a state of emergency.
Yeah.
They shut us down because of the Kincaid fire and not wanting to have any more fires happen, so I think they'd be pretty hard pressed not to approve that. I think they would get a lot of merit.
So we'll go to superintendent comments.
One of the things I want to make sure everybody knows is that we do have to charge admission to get into these state playoff games. I tried. I said we would pay for the officials, we'll pay our own expenses, we don't charge at games. They said it doesn't matter, you're hosting a CIF event, you must charge to get in, and here are the rates. I hate that it costs $11 for a parent to come and see their kid play.
It's a league requirement, is that right?
It's a state requirement to be in the playoffs. If we chose not to be in the playoffs, it wouldn't have mattered, but I think we chose to be in them for a reason. But I'm totally against admission fees like that, but there's nothing I can do about it. We're hosting their games. So it's $11 for an adult, and it's $6 for students, seniors, and I don't know what else they break it into. Oh, children. So it is what it is. I can't stop that. We don't get any of the money, zero. It all goes to them.
However, the gate does pay for the referees, doesn't it?
Well, it pays for the referees, which is
minor part.
Minor part, but the gate goes to them. The only thing we benefit from it financially is our concession stand, which I'm glad that they get that. But you know, I don't believe in admission fees to high school athletic events.
I echo that, but truthfully, after having years past spent off, I mean, this year I will spend a total of $11 times 2 for 2 events for my wife and I to get in, compared to what I would have done just 3 years ago. I think I can afford it. I'll make it happen.
Yeah, and actually, the soccer parents were a big reason why we went to no pay.
Yeah.
You know, when I go to a game and the parents are outside the fence, I'm like, oh no, this can't happen. So, but other things, yeah, we've had good working relationship. I think WTA and the teachers, we know we want to get better academically. How you get there is always a debate. I mean, it's been a debate no matter what school you go to. And it's a debate within buildings, within grade levels. But the issue is we need to get better, and I think we're all pretty focused on that. And I want to help them with whatever I can to do it. And so I think we're in the right place. CSEA was super helpful during the power outage. I can't say enough about what we got done and what we got accomplished to help us go down the road. Because it is difficult to try and maintain and catch up, and you just continually make a mess that you have to work through. And so we had an opportunity to fix that. And we saved a ton of food. The food service people came in, restocked themselves, got themselves back up and ready to roll. And so, you know, we're support staff, and me included. You know, so we got that done, and I was really pleased about that. I thought we worked together really well. I just want to echo the soccer game. It was probably the best high school soccer game I've ever been at. And like I said, it hit the pipe and went the wrong way. But, you know, I don't know. Is it better to do that or a shootout? I don't know. I hate shootouts. But yeah, the soccer team played really well, with heart and character.
It was a very good game.
Yeah, and that's what I'm not into how much do we win or not win, how many students are on the team. That's why when Brian was talking about participation, that's what we have those for, is for participation, not necessarily for trophies. Trophies are nice, but they happen when you have really good athletes. Participation happens because you have kids, and we have kids all the time. And the clubs at the high school and middle school, elementaries, I mean, what are some of the clubs even at Blosser? I don't even know them all.
I had 27 kids at Theater Arts Club today.
Wow.
Cool.
I know there's a
And
chess
there's a
club. I
ceramics
was talking
club and a
to-
gardening club.
A chess club.
Chess club and a dragon club.
Yeah.
Excellent. Lots of participation.
Sherwood's got Odyssey of the Mind groups going. The high school has a boatload of clubs. They have Christian athletes, non-Christian athletes, Latino clubs, knitting clubs. They have a bunch of stuff. And that was the entire intent of, it doesn't give a teacher what their value is. You know, a $500 stipend for doing a club doesn't give them what their value is. Their value's way over that. It acknowledges the fact that we appreciate what you're doing. And so, I think that's been a good addition. If kids are engaged in something other than the classroom, they always tend to do better. And they have a connection to school, and that's the goal. I'd like 100% of the students to be involved in something other than just the classroom. And so, technology-wise, the tech folks are ready to reload and replace the lab at Blosser. We're working on getting the carts to be better operational. You know, that's our technology struggle right now is in Blosser. Is we got to share equipment, we got to bounce it around, we got a lab. You know, we just need to get that into a better position. And you know, it's always about money. It's easy when you can write a check. It's a little more difficult when you don't have a checkbook to write. So we're getting there. Other things that are going well, if you look at all of the programs, not just athletics, band numbers are good. The high school's transitioning at the end of this term to their new trimester term, and there's lots of great electives. We have a full music program going at the high school. Guitar and piano and all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm really pleased with where we're at. The schedule has been very conducive to make CTE work. Some of the data Mike will share with you when he gets his WASC report back, 68% of the seniors who graduated had a CTE pathway endorsement. That's an important thing. You graduate with some kind of skill other than just a diploma. And we have really, really good programs. And I'm just going to throw one more bond issue pitch in there. You'll see if I had funding, the one room we don't have that I need is a culinary room. It's the missing link in CTE for me. It's the one place where we know if a kid has those skills, we know they're going to eat. We know that there's a lot of restaurants. We know there's restaurants everywhere you live. It's a skill that we have to move from the home ec environment where I grew up into a CTE mentality of culinary. And so it's one of the programs I would desperately like to add. And it's done through enrollment too. If we boost enrollment, we can maybe afford to do that. But it can't just be an add-on. And the room itself is very expensive to put together. I know people have talked to me about the old home ec room, making that a culinary room. Well, unfortunately, when ADA code and new code compliance comes in, pretty much everything in the room's going. There's not a piece of equipment left in the room. And so at that point, are you better to start from scratch with a new box? So.
Spencer, if you've got finals, we'll let you get out of here.
Honestly, that would be awesome.
Thanks. Finals. I should have let you go
No.
earlier. I apologize.
No, and I do want to say Spencer's fighting off senioritis really hard.
I'm doing my best.
Spencer, did you guys get a hydration station at the school?
Did we?
At the math place.
Yeah, we did.
Yep.
I don't have any math classes right now, so I'm never in there, but.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say, you mentioned it.
That is true. I appreciate you bringing that up. As much as I pestered people about it, it's in.
Yeah, no, Mark came up and talked to me about it. I was like, we're getting it. All right, good to hear it.
All right.
Thank you,
Spencer.
Have a good one, you guys.
Good luck on your finals.
Thank you.
So can I ask a question just before? You know, last time there was a concern that class size was growing at the high school. And now that we have extra students, does that help anything for like the planning of next year? Is it enough to qualify for a culinary unit or any of that? I mean, what's the plus?
If the high school continues to grow like it did this year,
Yeah.
yes. Because we'll get at a point where we have to add some time in. And it may be a start of a half-time teacher in culinary. The issue with culinary is the room is expensive to get set up, but it's really hard to find the teacher. It's really hard to find the teacher, except then I punish Laura with, well, you know, this guy's got this. Can you do a CTE endorsement? And she's like, oh my God, yes. And so it's paperwork and it's a bunch of work to get it done. But the value of a CTE program is huge.
Yeah.
Well, the state's finally come to recognize that. It's been in decline for so many years, and now they're recognizing that we still do need people in the trenches.
Right.
We need people with hands-on experience, hands-on skills to actually do real work, not shuffle paper.
Well, college kids need a starter job to make it through college too. So.
That's right. Anything further, Mark?
No.
We are at the public comments on the consent agenda. Do we have any public comments on the consent agenda?
I'm not concerned. I have a question about number 7. I don't really think it needs pulling off. I just want to ask it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Sure.
That's,
It's
oh,
gonna be
okay.
you, Nikki.
Well, no, it's just that, you know, in the policy, it's okay for the cafeteria fund to pay for various things that the cafeteria needs, in particular the, you know, transportation for food and things like that. And so I know that there was talk about January being the start of the switching of the cafeterias, the way it's set up. So, and I've been thinking frankly a lot about the couple $100,000 that seemed to be such a jump from before. Can any of that be blamed on the vans or anything, one-time events that, I mean, the vans that were bought, they're for the cafeteria or no?
No, they're student vans.
Oh, so the district doesn't even have yet the vans or
Oh, we
whatever.
do. We do have vans that we can use to transport
You
stuff.
can convert or throw in a,
You know, they're the van that Scooby used to drive around in for the mystery wagon, but yeah, we do have vans and vehicles. The good news is we're not transporting very far. We're just going from like a Blosser to a Brookside and a high school to a Bechtel. We'll be able to transport. They aren't the best vehicles and it may wear them out sooner, but at this point, to make a transition isn't going to include transportation costs.
Were you asking about something we've already purchased, or?
yeah, because I saw the thing about the 2 vans and I thought, oh, maybe that's why the cafeteria was so expensive or whatever, but it.
The vans that we purchased
I'm just trying to
in
justify all those.
2018-19 were part of student transportation, I believe.
Oh, okay, and they're not the ones being converted? I mean, you're not able to kind of.
No. We actually already have one of the vans that transports every day.
Yeah.
He drives to Sherwood every day.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And he drives, when we have to move something, he does it in that van. So we're just going to use the other one and start transporting with it as well. But part of getting the new white van for student transportation is the silver and the teal one now are a lot more available. And so we may be able to use those as part of that solution. But we're not in a position where I'm going to run out and buy a van for transportation to transport stuff around. I can't add $30,000 to their debt to do that. So we're gonna be able to do it internally with what we have.
Will it help cut some of the paperwork then that has to be done about the time that something leaves someplace and how hot it was? And I remember you talking last time about all the humongous amounts of paperwork,
Yep.
and so it doesn't help that at all, though.
It doesn't help it, it changes it from transport record to production records. Because the two buildings, the other two kitchens would have been doing production records.
Right.
Instead of them doing production records, they'll be doing transport records. So it's,
Okay, so it won't be a big increase to a couple, you know, I mean, it's like it's almost balanced, it just has different names.
We're hoping that it will result in a significant money savings.
Well, I understood that part. I just noticed that later it talks about the possibility of needing to cut a cafeteria staff worker. And I just thought, oh, well, if they're gonna have twice the paperwork, that's gonna be really tough, and I just, and checking
there is
stuff like
no
that.
intention of laying off anybody.
Well, that's what I thought you
And
said, but it
so-
mentioned something about that later.
Well, the issue is, as every time we have somebody leave the district, we always look and say, do we need to fill this position in this manner? Do we need
Yeah.
this? And there were about 5 positions this year that we didn't replace.
Yeah.
And those were intentional because there are different ways to do it. Times change and how do we do business is different. When we go from 4 kitchens to 2, just a simple thing. We have 4 head cooks right now.
Yeah.
We're gonna have 2 kitchens.
Right.
So we're not looking at, nobody's getting a pay cut, nobody's getting laid off. But if we do have an opening, which is fairly common to have an opening, we have to make a decision, do we need to fill that? Because we will be more efficient. If you think about serving, I don't remember what we serve a day, it's close to 700-800 meals a day. If you're doing that in 4 separate places, it's pretty inefficient.
Yeah.
And if you look at Brookside's kitchen in particular,
I've seen
that
it in
baby
the
is
freezer
duct taped
places
together,
like
the
that.
freezer's ancient. Just to get Brookside's kitchen fixed up, we can start with a $34,000 freezer that would have to be replaced. That doesn't make good sense. What makes good sense is to streamline our program, be efficient, put out good product in a much more efficient way in 2 kitchens. And Blosser and the high school are the 2 sites that have the best kitchens. In fact, Blosser's might be better than the high school.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how those can relate.
We were fortunate enough to see a model system that works in Kelseyville.
Yeah, I remember.
And though it's not exactly what we would be able to use because there are significant differences, but there were a number of things over there that we saw that could easily be incorporated here. And hopefully they'll have some significant payoffs in terms of efficiency, and efficiency by itself hopefully results in putting out a better product for less money.
And they're at 1, right? Even though
Yes.
there's student
They
populations
put out
higher.
300 or 400 more meals than we
Right.
do a day out of a single site, the high school.
But they have those new, or maybe they're not new, but if you were talking about methods of cooking that would be more efficient.
They have some
and I
they have
just-
some additional tools that we don't.
Yeah, that we don't. Oh, okay. I just had
And we
to
will
put it
have
all together.
those, if my grant is successful, we'll know that in early December. I've written a grant to replicate those tools.
Okay.
And so if we get that, we will have those in place. And I'm assuming that we're going to be successful. You know, they told me the grant looks good and the money's available. And if we get those, it will really help us be more efficient and put out a better product.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything else on the consent agenda? Do we have a motion to approve? And a second?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And having no further comment, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Carries. Item C, Charlie, approval final read on board policy AR 6142.1, sexual health and HIV/AIDS prevention. We pulled this last meeting so that we can have an opportunity to get a little more research on it.
And this is Board Member King's wheelhouse, and she's done a ton of research on this, and she and I have met and talked about it, and I think we may have some things we want you to consider to put in place into that.
So possibly some amendments to this policy?
Yeah, a little bit. Jean, you want to?
I just want to say that the board at the last meeting asked me to do some research on comprehensive sex education, so I did. I sent it out to the board about a week or two ago, and I gave them some background as to how sex ed used to be taught, and what sex ed is, a comprehensive sex ed is, and gave some background on the California Healthy Youth Act, which was enacted in 2016 and is actually already part of our board policy. And then I gave some information as to what was in the framework, which will have to be voted on or incorporated into our board policy in 2020, and then I gave some information as to why this is so controversial. And this particular approach to comprehensive, to sexual sex ed, and that it's taught to minor children, no parent consent required. It normalizes anal and oral sex for children, as by laws it is inclusive. It's an obsessive focus on sexual pleasure. It promotes and encourages sexual exploration and experimentation. It promotes and encourages exploration and experimentation with gender identity and sexual orientation. It teaches children how to give and receive sexual consent, even though the children are minors. It exposes children to visual and written pornography. It instructs children on their sexual rights, bypassing parent rights. That is too much too soon and sexualizes children. And there is a parent opt-out for parts of the curriculum, but no opt-out is allowed for other parts of the curriculum. So anyway, so this item C that we pulled off the consent agenda items last board meeting has to do with just inserting some stuff. The California Healthy Youth Act is already in our board policy because that was passed in 2016. And when I met with Mark the other day, I told him what was really important to me is that the statement in here that says the district shall respect the rights of parents, guardians to supervise their children's education on these subjects and to impart values regarding human sexuality to their children. It's really important to me that parents know what's being taught and that this is what the state is requiring that we teach, and that we're transparent about what's being taught so that parents can exercise their opt-out. That's really important to me. And that I don't want us to push it under the rug because it's controversial, and so that parents don't realize what's being offered their children. And so Mark and I talked about that fairly extensively. There was a quote in the LA Times, an LA Times article. It's a direct quote of Governor Gavin Newsom. He says, "I'm a parent. I don't want someone that the governor of California appoints to make a decision for my family." And that's what the state of California is doing with this comprehensive sex ed, is making a decision as to what's right for families, and that bothers me a lot. So anyway, Mark thought that we could incorporate something that really respected parents' opt-out rights. So I would be very pleased with that.
A couple things. One is that understand that K-5 is optional to teach that K-5. It's not required to teach the K-5. It's the middle school, high school portions on sexuality that we're really having the discussion about. It's number 11, and it talks about parent/guardian notification. So if you look through, he's done back about 3 or 4 pages into it, and it talks about parent/guardian notification. I think that it would be in our best interest if we had some type of statement that was along this lines. At least 2 weeks prior to the instruction, before the instruction is given, there will be an informational packet of what is being taught sent home to the parent. A week prior to the instruction, there would be an evening parent meeting scheduled for anyone interested to ask questions about the curriculum and talk to the teacher. And at that point, you could accept opt-outs and let a parent stress any concern they might have. But I think it's important that, I know we do notification already. My biggest concern about notification is mostly at Bechtel. We do notification, but we've got to get the note to the parent.
Right.
And so I think the way to get it to the parent is to use our notification system we have, not rely on a note that's given to the kid that they take home. That we get the notification to the parent and let them see the material that's going to be taught, and let them have an opportunity to come in and make a decision. Because ultimately, the people who want to opt out are going to read that and look at it and make a decision to opt out. And they have a right to opt out that we need to honor. But I think the statement from the board is, we're probably a little less than lukewarm on where this curriculum is, and we want to make sure folks know what it is, and the parent has a choice, and we want to let them know they have a choice. Did I say that the right way?
Yeah.
And by the way, the high school needs to upgrade their health book to one that's approved. So we also picked that up. Jeannie picked that up, that our book fell off the approved list. So the health program at the high school needs a new approved text that they use.
And we have to have that in place by January or so?
Yeah, we'll get it in place. I'm not overly concerned about that. The textbook issue is, we were Williams compliant. We're just not the new curriculum compliant, but they just put it into effect. So we have some lead time. It's not like we're going to run out and buy books tomorrow, but we do know that we have to upgrade that to an approved book.
Maria had something to say.
Yeah, I'm glad Maria's here because, and by the way, I know she'd be here because she's pretty consistent, that we need to talk about this. That's my building I would be most concerned at.
So the only thing that would be new to that notification, because we notify parents through our notification system, and which is my Sunday call to them, and we do send the opt-out, the letters home with students. However, we tell them that if they're coming, and we do have the curriculum on preview for parents who want to take a look at it, but they have to make the effort to go to the school and look look at the curriculum. So what would be new would be, or added to that, would be that we would send home some sort of a packet that has that information. Again, we're gonna try to mail that, right, instead of sending home with the student, right?
Digital.
Digital.
We rarely send anything home with kids because it ends up all over Willits. And then if we give that packet, that would be new. But I think the most important thing about what you said is to actually have a night where a lot of our parents don't actually read a whole packet or get through all of this stuff, and it would be great if they could somehow visually see some presentation about what that curriculum entails. And then I think they would be more able to want to opt out or not, because they have a tendency to trust that you know what you're teaching, and I don't really need to know, but this is something that they would, I think, that they would benefit from. So those two things.
It's different curriculum.
Yeah, it's different.
Because if we just think it's what we're used to, then yeah, I'm going to trust that you guys know what you're teaching. But if I know it's that, then I know. I don't want my 7th grader learning that stuff.
That's my issue, is this is one of those things that we don't want to hear, why didn't you tell me? The content is not something you want to, why didn't you tell me on. So that's my concern, is we get that information out as best we can.
And some parents might be fine with it, you know, it's inclusive, I mean, some people might be fine with that. I'm not saying I'm right, my insight is right and they're wrong, you know, but I just think that parents need to know what's being taught so that they can, if they choose to teach because for thousands of years, parents have been teaching their kids, you know, about reproduction, you know, and all of a sudden the schools start doing it in the 1950s, and now we're into some pretty out there sexual activities being taught in the schools, and I just think parents really need to be clear what's being taught so they can say, you know, I'd rather not have my child exposed to that, and I'll teach them at home.
So will they still be able to opt out of all of it, or just sections of it, like you were saying earlier? They can opt out.
They could opt out of the sex part of the instruction, but not the gender part of the instruction.
And HIV has to be part of it. Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Paul.
I can understand the situation for the second part of what you're all in agreement with, but the first part, no K-5, I have objection to it. It needs to be presented. We have kids who are transgenders at that age, and it's difficult enough on them, and even worse when we have kids that don't have a clue, and one year they say your name is Mary and the next year it's Tom, and you just can't always trust parents to even know that that's happening in the first place, and then in the second place to be able to give an open and honest type of education. And I'm certain that we can trust every single kinder through 5th grade teacher to make sure that what they are teaching is absolutely age appropriate. And according to this, they have to be in-serviced, etc. anyway. And I also have a concern that as a public school, which is the only place that the government can mandate that everyone learn things, we are shirking our responsibilities. We need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn everything they possibly can in an age-appropriate style. And your kids can always stay home. You can always opt out. You can always do independent study for a week. I mean, there are a million options. Sorry. There are at least 10 options that I can think of off the top of my head that exist already. And I have never known the state to be ultra-liberal. And so certainly there are things that I think should be added to this.
And that's it, when you're talking about that, and you're talking about the government making the decision on what people are learning, and everybody needs to be exposed to whatever you're saying, you know, equal knowing, maybe what I believe is not what our government believes.
And that's, it says in the policy that you don't have to.
Like, who gets to set that, what they want, what they
As the
should be able
parent,
to be
you do.
learning?
It's just that when you start restricting a policy, you also restrict what everyone else has the opportunity to learn. It's easy enough to keep yourself out of knowing something. It's difficult to know things. And so what a policy does, or it's called a policy here, is it says these are all the things that at this point in time we think you need to know about. Sadly, 50 years ago, people didn't know a whole lot about things they should have known about, and we had people being beat up and slaughtered because they were different than their neighbor. That still goes on. I don't mean to lessen that, but I certainly do believe that the minute you restrict education, you're asking for a whole bunch of problems that should not ever exist. The minute you say, you have the right to be educated, choose what you want to learn, you get to make that decision. It's open to you, as broad as you want to know or as little. But the minute you say, no, we're not even going to teach that, then you're saying you don't have the right to learn those things.
And Paul, you bring up a great point. I can't dispute that. What I can tell you is I'm glad I don't get to vote on it. You guys get to vote on it. I'm merely telling you that K-5, you have an opportunity to present it or not. The curriculum is vastly different than it was a year ago. Okay? And I will totally agree with you. Times have changed vastly different. Opinions have changed vastly different. Parent notification, parent choice is really important here.
That's right.
So if that extends to K-5, we'll have to figure out a process in K-5 to sort that out.
I would
Or does the
think
board
so.
say?
Are we currently teaching this K-5? Or some element
Not
of
like
it?
this,
Not like this.
not this.
It's my understanding that if a school district chooses to teach sex ed incorporated into the K-6 curriculum, is that it has to meet the same mandates as the middle school and high school curriculum, and that it has to be inclusive. So for instance, if you teach sex ed in 5th grade, because some girls are starting to menstruate then and that kind of thing, is that it has to be taught boys and girls together. You can't separate boys from girls, because there might be a child or two who are questioning their gender, and so if they're biologically a male, but they're thinking they're a female, and they could get put with the males for instruction, then that's not a good thing, according to this material. So you have to teach everybody together. And so it's that kind of thing, is that the curriculum K through 6 is not mandated, but if you choose to teach it, it has to meet most of the same requirements as the high school and middle school curriculum. So.
Except that it states it needs to be age appropriate. It states
Right.
that like 6 times.
Right.
And it also states that the teachers will be in service in their age appropriateness of teaching. We have teachers most of the time with full teaching credentials that are very skilled in their profession. It just really worries me to think that you don't know anything from the school's perspective, so to speak, and then all of a sudden at a given age level, you get to learn things. That's why the push, I mean, it needs to be treated like any other academic area. And we start music as early as we can so that the appreciation is a lifelong, lasting, sincere one. We start arts the same way, and we start how to be nice to one another exactly the same way. There are curriculums for almost anything you can imagine. Good nutrition and healthy living and everything you want. It really seems to me a seriously serious issue when you start restricting what is or isn't taught, not because it's some whim and I feel like teaching about cults today, but in a way of making people aware of what is life and what they will see around them. It's just, you're so much better prepared when you have an idea and a hopefully strong factual background than when you don't. And you won't have to if your family doesn't want you to. But if you have a family that thinks to themselves, gosh, it makes me so uncomfortable to have to discuss various religions or various behaviors or physical development, I can depend on the school to do that for me. And the minute you take all that away, you're saying, you can't do it, so your kid won't get it. And for me, that's a horrible problem
Let me
to
ask you
set
this.
someone up for.
Is there consensus among the board members about the 2 weeks prior?
Oh, absolutely.
Giving out information, setting a meeting a week, at least a week prior to?
I'm fully supportive of that.
Exactly.
I mean, so I think we're clear on that. I think your really only issue is if, my advice is, this generally happens in late spring. That's generally when the instruction happens. At K-5, I think we're going to have to get some teacher preparation in place. I think we're going to need to maybe look at, who's the group that you use? The Bechtel?
Planned Parenthood.
Yeah. someone, them or someone like them, to give teachers the right information. Because we have to be spot on that we're teaching the same thing and the right thing. And this is one of those times where we really have to coach teachers to not be
Personally involved.
personally
It's a
involved, no
lesson.
opinions, no nothing.
Exactly.
It's a tough subject, and I can think of several teachers who are going to be very apprehensive to do this instruction. So I want to meet with the K-5 people in particular and say, do we need to bring somebody in to do the instruction? Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the 11C edition that you were talking about with the parent notification being added, is that in what's in your board packets right now?
No, it's not.
So you actually need to bring this back to next month to have the final, to take action on the final.
Okay, on the
Yeah.
language you mean to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's not
Policy.
in, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
the only reason we're belaboring the conversation now, we could easily table and say, obviously, we're not done. The problem is, this curriculum is already in place. It's already been voted by the state board, and we have to put it in play this year. This is not, well, they did it, and you can maybe wait till next year. We have to fix this now. And so, adding the wordage that I talked about, we'll put in, but there needs to be some discussion amongst you guys, all 5 of you, including Bob. Where are you at with K-5? If we're going to include K-5, then I want to meet with the teachers prior to that, because there's in-service, there's who's comfortable, who's not comfortable, do we have a third party, what's the notification look like home to the parent, that kind of stuff. I wouldn't want to just throw this out and, hey, we got to do this. You talk to PTO, you talk to teachers, you have the conversations, so a parent has a legitimate understanding before they opt out. Because the problem with opt-outs is a lot of people don't get the info, and it's, hey, if the school thinks it's good, go ahead. And other people go, well, if the school's asking us to opt out, I'm opting out just because I get a chance to. That's what I don't want the decision to be made on.
Or they ask the kid, you want to do it? Can I clarify what you want inserted at 11C?
Yes, ma'am.
And make sure you guys want it in there too. With the parent notification and statement, at least 2 weeks prior to instruction, an informational packet will be sent to parents. 1 week prior, a parent meeting will take place to ask questions and give parents an opportunity to talk to teachers, share concerns, and accept or turn in the opt-out forms. The high school needs a new text.
Yep.
That's.
And it's a K-12 thing in this deal, and that's just what you're adding to this. Oh, that's good.
So, Alex, I'm not sure how you want to handle the K-5 issue. If you want to straw ballot yourselves, you want to each comment on it. I don't know how you want to do that, but you're going to have to.
It's going to be on next month's agenda, right?
Right.
So why don't we have that as a separate line item?
Okay. And it's a open session item where you gotta throw your cards on the table and pick left or right.
I would be interested if any parents would like to attend that meeting. I'd like to
Yeah, I really wish
get a
we
feel for what some of our parents think.
So
Hopefully some of them are watching our display right now.
K-5 sexual health and HIV/AIDS prevention.
No, it's K-12 at this point. In
It's
the
This is a separate, the K-5 is a separate
Correct.
issue.
Yeah,
that
it's a
you
separate
want-
issue.
Yes,
Okay.
on the agenda, separate issue on the agenda.
Oh, a separate issue on the agenda, but
On
it's
the
all
agenda.
part of the.
Right, there's no,
Part-
we're not
Oh,
gonna,
okay.
we're not gonna change what the state has mandated.
Thank you. I was
Is
getting
it
confused.
possible to get more information on what is actually taught K-5? I know in generalities, but I'm talking about the actual.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is we
So-
gotta get what they would do K-5. Because I've not seen.
Because it's hard to make a decision if you're not looking at the actual curriculum or material that we
Great
talk,
point.
or even the scope and sequence of
The framework,
something.
the framework has been voted on by the Department of Education, and that's going to be coming through in 2020. So, so the framework is like a 1,000-page document.
Is this what you're talking about here?
Yes.
Okay, so,
And it's broken down by grade level, so you can look at a grade level and see what they're asking to be taught at that grade
So
level.
we don't even have access to the
But we
framework
don't have
as of this time.
copies.
It's
I
been
can
voted
get-
on, and they're tweaking it a little bit, but.
Yeah.
so here's, I'm gonna need a little more help from Jeannie at some point here, but Jeannie was kind enough to provide us with the web link to, it's called the Revised Draft Health Education Framework, May of 2019 revision. And it lists a series of 9 chapters and a variety of appendices that describe, to some degree, what this new curriculum and instruction are supposed to include. What I haven't seen it all yet. I've read Chapter 5, which is grades 7 and 8, Chapter 6, which is grades 9 through 12, Chapter 9, which is instructional materials for health education, and Appendix, examples of standards-based instruction. Virtually everything that I've read so far has told me that this is, I would argue that it is reasonable in what I've seen so far. Granted, I haven't read all of the document yet, and it's very possible that the things that Jeannie has brought forth are clearly in there, but I haven't discovered those yet. So I'm planning on talking more with Jeannie over the before the next board meeting to find out exactly where you're getting the information that leads you to the statements that you made earlier tonight. But beyond that, I have great concern with what the state's mandated, if that is in fact the case. But that aside, since they've already voted on it, we're not getting around that. Now the question is how do we want to implement it and give people the option, and give people as much information as they can, parents as much information as we can, so that they can make an informed decision as to whether or not they choose to have their children exposed to the information that the state is passing down to us. That's that simple.
Can I just ask, Jeannie, did you take a look at that Healthy Me, Healthy You curriculum from?
I'm sorry, could you speak up a little bit, Maria? I'm a little bit hard to
Did you take
hear.
a look at that Healthy Me, Healthy Us, curriculum from San Francisco Unified?
Did I look at it?
Is that where were you looking? What curriculum were you looking at?
I was looking at the Healthy Youth Act, and I was looking at the curriculums that they recommended that are in alignment with the Healthy Youth Act. And that's one of them, Positive Prevention Plus. There's a number of them that are in alignment with the California Healthy Youth Act.
Yeah, thank you. I know what you mean.
Okay. It's on the docket.
Okay, cool. So we will not take action on item C tonight. It's been tabled. Do we need to actually have a vote on tabling?
No.
Item D, consideration of board meeting dates for the calendar year 2020. I believe those were proposed.
Yeah. The only 2 anomalies on there is one of the dates falls on, is it Veterans Day? November?
Easter and then,
Yeah, one falls over spring break and one is on Veterans Day. And so my proposal was that we move to the 3rd week.
On those 2?
Yes. So normally it's the 2nd week, but in November, that's Veterans Day. And so we decided that it should move down. And then the other one happens during spring break vacation.
Are those dates already reflected here?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. They're out of, if you look at a calendar, you go, why did they pick the 3rd week in November and April?
Do those affect any like budget presentations?
November, no. The December is when I bring first in room, so it's not impacted by that. And also not April.
The later in the month, the better she likes them.
Can we move the other candidates that are finalists back?
Do we need to take board action on that, or is that just?
Yeah, you want to approve your dates.
Is there any, I know that except for this past year, we'd always done it on first Wednesdays of every month. And then I know that I had asked about second Wednesdays and it got switched, which was really good, I thought, in my mind. And I wonder now if there's any way of putting it back to the first ones, or you think that that's just too confusing. It conflicts with the city council all of the time. And I just was curious if, you know, you like it set in the way that it is.
I think the
It's
city
not a
council
big
should change
enough
their
deal.
date.
Well, actually, I asked them why they didn't want to. And they thought I was goofy, so we won't pass that along.
I think that when we talked about this last year, yeah, full disclosure, I'm biased because of my fiscal reporting
Well, I
deadlines,
think we
and
could fix a few months to suit you and then the
But
rest.
last year when we did talk about making this change, that issue I think was brought up, and we had been doing the meetings at 5:30, and I think that was the reason we moved it forward to 5. Within the, I think city council starts later than us. I think the hope
7.
was that
Yeah, they start at 7 at night.
people could come here if need be and then move on to the next.
Yeah.
You know, we gave that extra half hour. So.
No, you're really, I remember all of that. It's just that it didn't quite
Well,
work out the
in
way.
fairness, this is one of our longer meetings.
Well, we've had a few that were longer, and I'm not in any way saying that they need to be shorter in the sense that, I mean, it's wonderful if they're shorter, but things don't get discussed. Things, I benefit, personally at least, much more out of a lot of information than a little information, and information takes time. It's, you know, I mean, it's not the biggest deal. I'm not looking to cause an issue one way or the other. I was just curious.
I'm perfectly comfortable pretty much any of the dates. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know where everybody else stands. I'm perfectly happy to leave it where it is, only because we've pretty much established this, and I hate to keep bouncing the public and everybody else back and forth. If there's a compelling reason to change, then quite frankly, we should change. But unless there's a compelling reason, I would argue we leave it alone.
If there were a burning city issue you knew coming up, you could change your meeting date. I mean, if there was, I can't think of what that would be, but.
Okay.
Blackout.
Is there can we get a motion on the floor to accept these as the meeting dates for 2020?
I move that we accept these as the meeting dates for 2020.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry?
I just, I thought it was a given, but I didn't have anything else to say, sorry.
All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of resolution 2019-20-8, consideration of a possible action on resolution regarding reduction/elimination of classified employee services. Mark?
Yep, and if you look through there, there's a list of positions that we're not required to put in place. We have looked at our staffing and filled those vacancies when needed and made some changes where we needed to make changes. The example I had talked about when Paul and I were having the discussion about, you know, food service employees, for example. When we have an opening, it behooves us to look at it and say, oh, somebody retired, we just need to hire somebody immediately. We look at the service and what do we need, and that's what this reflects. It reflects positions that we don't need to necessarily put back in place. And Lisa Reed was a great employee, did a wonderful job for us in food service. Unfortunately, she moved to Oregon, but she was in a position that was basically trying to keep us with free and reduced lunch counts. Well, we don't do free and reduced lunch counts anymore because everybody's there. So the majority of her work was taken already by a change in program. So the need to replace was not there. And so we look at that every time we have an opening. And we go through a very official process in my world for going through reductions and all that.
Clearly, this requires some negotiation with
I have met with them, yes.
Yeah.
We've
CSEA.
negotiated the effects of this already.
And so all
And
of
they're in
these,
agreement.
all of these listed are currently vacant positions and will create no layoffs, is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
Except for the student intervention technicians, in which there's 4, and Mark explained to me that those are being absorbed by the county Office of Education.
So those, the student intervention technicians are the ones that are being eliminated with this resolution. The people that were in those positions are actually in behavior assistant positions now that are owned by the county.
Right.
That program is housed on our school sites, but the county has taken over that ED program.
Right.
And they're actually in higher paying positions now that require certification that they are receiving through on-the-job training.
So the positions on our books are currently
Are gone.
vacant, but the
Yes.
work is still being done.
Correct. The services are being provided to the students through the new program.
Nobody was fired or laid off in any of these positions.
Excellent.
These were restructured and reflected with the CSEA who we work with.
Look at a motion to approve item E.
I'll move to approve item E.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And any further discussion? I would ask, is there any likelihood in the foreseeable future of reinstating any of these positions?
So, do you mind if I answer that?
Go ahead.
We wouldn't have eliminated them if we saw that.
Okay.
We are laying the groundwork for a significantly higher payroll with the implementation of minimum wage.
Got it.
Yeah, and PERS.
And
so-
PERS and STIRS,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we're making adjustments, but we're making adjustments when they're available.
Right.
We're not looking at current employees to say, how can we downsize this department?
Right.
When the opportunity knocks, we answer.
Okay. Any further discussion? It's a roll call vote. Trustee Nunes?
Aye.
Trustee King?
Aye.
Mr. Chavez?
Aye.
And myself? Aye. Mr. Colvig is absent. Item number F, approval of the MOU with MCOE, Mendocino Poets in the Schools. I believe we've seen this before.
Annually.
Yeah, they've been doing this for many years.
Yeah. And it is the annual arrangement where we have a poet in the school, Sanhedrin most notably, and it's a good program.
When I was teaching at the high school, Dan Roberts came and was a poet in the schools at the high school, and he came and worked with my resource kids to write poetry, and it was a really nice experience. And we used computers to illustrate the poems and that kind of thing, and it was a great experience. I remember the poem I wrote when Dan Roberts came was, I wrote a poem about my hands compared to my grandmother's hands, because I realized that my hands had begun to look like my grandmother's hands. I still have that poem stuck away someplace, but anyway, it's a nice program.
Yeah, I recall that in years past, we've had the benefit of presentations at the board from this program. So looking forward to that again.
So I have a question.
A motion to approve?
Wait, oh well.
Excuse me, go ahead.
One of the, it says here that this one is going to be at the high school. It's going to be 12 sessions. Is it going to be to an English class, or is it a matter of, you know,
No,
like-
it'll be in an English class.
Oh,
And-
okay.
And Mike picked 12 sessions for a reason. He
Oh,
probably
okay.
counted the number of sections he has. I
To
believe
make
he
sure.
probably, whatever trimester it is, whether it's second or third, he probably looked to see how many sections of English classes he had going.
Oh, I see. And then it says that the MCOE reimburses $720. Is that the full cost, or that's just their chunk and the district picks up the rest?
So, a lot of times when we have these types of grants, we try to make sure we structure it so that the full cost, including statutory benefits, is covered.
This has been ongoing for many years, and the practice has been that the $720 gets paid as payroll, and then we absorb the statutory benefits, but it's a pretty immaterial amount for us. I can get you a figure if you would like that.
No, it just seemed like 12 sessions for $720 wasn't a whole lot of money.
Typically it's done as, so usually it's done as a grant. They bring somebody in as a consultant. In our case, it's run, so there wouldn't be payroll taxes in that case. For us, there is, because this person already operates as an employee of the district, and so it has to be done through payroll. But I think it's set up as a stipend, so it's not done on a per session or hourly basis. That $720 is considered a stipend.
Oh, okay.
Anybody interested in a motion to approve?
I'll approve it. I'll make a motion to approve this, I'm sorry.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And one absent. Okay, so parts. Presentation, item G, presentation, interview, bond counsel services.
Do you need to, or should we?
No. No. When I talked before, we looked at G, H, and I. G is not necessary. In regards to the bond counsel, Mike Cady is the one who has been used by multiple districts to do, is it Bill Cady?
Bill Cady.
Oh yeah, it's Bill Cady. Bill Cady has done this for multiple districts. He only serves really two functions. He writes the resolution for the board, and he writes the bond language that goes on the ballot. And so in our board policy, that's one of the things I can do is contract for a service such as his. It's a low dollar figure. It's a one-time thing, so I will entertain that contract with him and get it done.
Okay.
But we have to have that to even have a vote on it.
Right.
So I would have to do that prior to December 2nd meeting, so you had something to take action on.
Okay.
Okay?
Estimate of costs?
I don't really know. I know it's not very much. I don't know the exact dollar figure. It just depends on the attorney's hourly fee. In his case, he's done this multiple times, so I don't think he's going to be starting from scratch. So I can't imagine it's a great deal of money.
School and college doesn't provide any services along these lines?
We checked with them first, and they do not have anybody in-house. Bill Cady was actually recommended by school and college, and then also vetted by Adam.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Adam vetted him, school and college recommended him, and I did ask school and college why they don't do that, and they said because we would represent the school if they had an issue with their bond. We can't be the one who wrote the bond if we're going to represent you if you have an issue in the bond. So,
which is exactly what occurred for us before, which is fine.
Right.
Makes sense.
So they kind of protect their own interests. So G is not really necessary, which means H isn't necessary. In regards to communication, I want to talk about that when we have Adam here on the 2nd.
So I'm going to get really clear here. We, as a board, we do not need to take action on items G or H tonight.
Correct.
Do they need to direct you to bring a contract back in December?
I think that our board policy allows Mark to enter into contract, and then he can have the board ratify it at a later date. So at that point, we would have more detail about cost.
Yeah, it's no different than a contract with somebody to do a service.
These three items tonight, items G, H, and I, do not commit the board to approving going out for a bond measure at this stage. No. We're looking to do that, if we do that, on December 2nd.
Correct. You're giving me the okay, basically get everything set up so we have something for the 2nd to physically say yes or no to. Okay. That's what the issue is for me.
Does any of the board have heartburn with this? Okay.
So we're not taking action on I, you're going to wait for when
Yes.
Adam is here.
Yeah, when Adam's here, we'll talk about communications, because,
That'll be on the second as well.
right, because that's part and parcel of the program. And if we choose to ask for the bond, then we talk about communications.
Okay. And during that period, we'll also discuss, assuming, for the sake of argument, that we choose to move forward with the bond, that's when we'll also discuss how, what the dollar amount per household that we'll be looking for. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And I'm assuming that without further comment from the board, we have no objection with the superintendent securing bond counsel services. Okay. Moving on, items J, K, L, M are first reads for a variety of new policies. Never seem, Board of Education never seems to be
Gotta love that legislature.
new policies.
Between legislatures and courts, you're always gonna have stuff. So.
Great nighttime reading to put you to bed. We already have some items we've already slated for the next general meeting. Any public comment for items not on the agenda?
We have some people. Come on up.
Please.
You get the podium.
Thank you for sitting through the whole board meeting.
I'd like to recommend that you have public comment after the flag salute. Much of what you've talked about is esoteric to the public generally. I came here because I was very upset. Just as a former parent of 3 kids that went through this high school and teacher.
Could you identify yourself for the board?
Oh, sorry. My name's Josephine Silva, and as I said, I'm a former parent, and I was a former elementary school teacher in a LA City School, LA County District, Newhall. And I also, oddly enough, was a board member for Waldorf School in Calpella for many years. So I come with an understanding of everyone's great efforts, and you're and hearing a lot of positive things that are happening in the school, and especially from the teachers. But this is negative, and that's that it's not okay for 2/3 or 75% of our students to be not proficient in language, arts, or math. And it's not okay to the students. You failed them. It's not okay for the rest of the community. It's not okay for our future, because we're dependent upon that. And I don't know how you can turn it around real fast. And I heard what you said about analyzing the data, and that's a good start. But I don't think that's where it's at. I think it's something much deeper, and I do know that there's committees for, various faculty members for the math department here, or the language art department, and so I know that teachers meet on these things, and I'm sure they discuss things, and I have great faith in the faculty to solve some of these problems, but I still think you have to go deeper, and I think it's a cultural problem. And by that I mean, some years ago, we didn't have all of these cell phones, laptops. And what that teaches our kids is gotta have it fast and quick. And that information is it's visual, it's easily, I don't know, you just get involved in it. And you want to keep checking, oh, what's so-and-so doing right now? And what's this and that? And it doesn't help the critical thinking side of your brain. And there's a lot of good information about it in terms not only just how your brain starts to work after you've been accustomed to these items, but there's also that good information about putting someone in front of a computer for more than 2 hours. They get depressed. And when you get depressed, I just don't understand how it's so easy at that point for students to pay attention and think critically about what they're reading, to think with any kind of quantitative reasoning as to what they need to attend to as far as math is concerned. I'm suggesting that that may be one of the underlying problems, and how you deal with that in the classroom is become very, very tricky, because students go after school, they're on those items. That may be just one of the problems. The other problems is you might have a large percentage, a large enough percentage, 20%, 30% of your students may actually have some traumatic problems at home. And that's not so easy to deal with. But I suspect that you do not have a person on campus who is a certified psychological counselor, like you did, I know, 30 years ago, used to have one, at least at the high school level.
There's a certified counselor at every building, with the exception of Sherwood. But
Full-time.
Full-time. There's actually 2 at the high school.
That's wonderful. That's good to hear.
But you're right, the problem
there needs to be also a curriculum for self-esteem at an early age. You need to have some kind of sense of what's going on with those students who are not proficient. Because that is your real, I mean, that's the huge part of your student body. It's not your, your star students that we're all looking at and going, oh yes, these guys are fantastic. It's not them. And I don't know what you do, but I think that it needs to have some sort of ad hoc committee to start looking at some of the possible things that might be holding students back from learning. And I really would suggest that you start looking to your teachers for those answers, because my guess is they know. I know a lot of teachers, and I've heard a lot of discussion, and yeah, they do know.
And you're spot on 2 topics for sure. Technology does not raise test scores. Unfortunately, it's always a balancing act, because unfortunately the state of California requires the kid to sit on computers to do their test, which is unfortunate.
That's fine, but we don't have to teach to that.
Well, I want to make sure you understand the balancing act also is the vast majority of jobs when students leave high school, they have to have computer skills for. And so there's always a balancing act.
I'm sorry. My 87-year-old mom got a computer for the first time, a laptop, and she was so excited, and it didn't take her long to learn. And I don't believe that the students in this school would take them that long either.
Nope.
But if they can't think critically, and they can't read proficiently, and if they can't, that job isn't going to be there for her.
And
And-
we're on
and-
the same page with that. In fact, we just
So-
shared an article amongst ourselves about technology not being the solution to raising test scores.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of information out. I'm just suggesting that that might be one of the difficulties.
There are a great number of competing issues with respect to providing a quality education today, and I'll be the first one to tell you that what I see happening with cell phones disturbs me. And the frustration I have with it is, well, let me back up. I've read quite a bit about the issue, and there are two schools of thought with respect to cell phones in the school system. One of them is that they should be strongly restricted so that during class period times, students are, they don't have access to them. I mean, basically, you put it in the slot when you walk in the door, you don't get to touch it until the class period's over and you walk away. Yet there's another school of thought that's very strong that suggests that we should be incorporating cell phones with technology in instruction wherever possible, so that we turn them into a tool for instruction as opposed to a distraction that we see so commonly. Again, I've mentioned the fact I spend a fair amount of my mornings in the CTE wood shop. That teacher, multiple times, at least once every day or every period, but usually often multiple times, he's confiscating cell phones and taking them away from the students that are abusing the use of those cell phones during his class. And I would hope that other teachers are doing similar things throughout their day.
You mean there's not a policy? I think it's up to you to make a policy about it.
I will tell you that K-8, the policy is very simple. Unless the teacher says you can use them, they put them away, and they're not out. I don't go through the building seeing kids on their cell phone K-8 all the time. The high school kids are more problematic because they pass more, and so in passing times and lunch and that. But K-8, that's not the issue. I've never even really seen cell phones out at Brookside. And so there are obviously issues with technology. But the other thing you mentioned was social emotional counselors. That's a huge issue, because our counselors were all trained in the old school model about academics and how to get along with your teacher and all those other things. The problem is we're getting a boatload of kids who've had a boatload of baggage before they even get to the classroom. That's a huge problem for us. It is for everybody, but in our community it's very prevalent as well. And so there's a real transition to try and figure out how to use guidance counselors for social emotional and not do the tasks they had been doing.
Here, when my kids went to high school here,
Yeah.
there was it wasn't a guidance counselor I was talking about.
Yeah.
She was specifically a social emotional counselor.
Well, I should point out that we are acutely aware of our test scores. I mean, acutely aware of
I
our test
would
scores.
understand that, and I'm sure that you are. I'm just suggesting
And I guess what I'm really
that
trying
there
to say here
needs
is
to be some
we're not
some
sitting still.
issues behind those test scores that we may not be addressing. And I'm suggesting that your teachers, your faculty, probably some in service or just in meeting in small groups, can start to address some of the things that they think might be going on with their students. And it's obviously not just one thing. For example, some information came across to me that birth control pills. Now, I don't know how many of your high school females might be taking birth control pills, but I'm sure there are some. But they have a tendency to make the student depressed, to the point where you would have between the, I think it's 15 to 19-year-old population, twice the number of suicides for those on birth control pills than who are not taking them. That's a huge difference. Okay, so how does someone who's concerned about, well, that they're depressed, they're anxious, and all the side effects of that, how do they operate in the classroom? How
So
do they
Sylvia,
sit
I
and
think I
learn?
hear you saying that we need to recognize the problems that are happening in the classroom, and that teachers are hands-on with those issues, and that you would like the school board to hear the teachers talk about what those items are. I really appreciate that.
And then
Thank
act
you.
on it.
Okay, so what I reported earlier was that we're building those bridges right now so that we are communicating with our board and with our district office so that we all understand.
And that's
all
what
the
I did hear
details.
you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
I also know
complicated.
that traditionally, teachers did, for different sets of faculty would meet as groups and make certain decisions. And some of those decisions, of course, were some of the difficulties they were finding with their students. And I'm assuming that, 30, 40 years ago, that the students weren't, that they were doing
Kids
better.
today are not like we were. You're right.
Exactly. And so what's the main difference? The main difference to
We're
me
working on all
were
those
those little gizmos. And and they train your brain to have the,
But they're also a reality in our world now. So finding that balance is
but not in
exactly
the
what we're
classroom.
doing.
I mean, how, if they train you to have the perseverance of a flea, and then you come to your classroom, and you are not fast like that item. You just aren't.
Or flashy.
Or flashy, or da-da-da-da-da. And your students, are expecting that, and they get bored. And as soon as they get bored, they start thinking about their own problems or whatever. Or, passing paper, and it just.
So I think everybody sitting here is in
I-
agreement with you.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah.
Joe,
I'm wanting to hear some solutions, that's all.
Josephine, I just wanted to say that my son's 33, he went through Willits schools, and when he was in elementary school, I don't remember there being social emotional counselors. But I volunteer and have volunteered the last 6 years in the elementary schools in Willits, and at Brookside and Blosser.
Tapestry.
Huh?
I think Tapestry.
No,
does have
not
a counselor.
Tapestry. Well, anyway, there are social emotional counselors. I've seen kids receive those services when they're having difficulties in the classroom. And again and again and again, I've seen those services. I know at Blosser, there's 2 social emotional counselors that work with students.
That's really good to
So
hear.
there's things in place that are happening. We're not ignoring the situation. There's kids that need help, and they're getting the help.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I also wanted to share that we have had some staff attending workshops that I think were primarily targeted towards folks who are working with foster students. However, those trauma-informed practices can be leveraged to assist all of our students. So we've had some folks who've attended conference in the last year or two related to those practices, and including one of our, I think our middle school counselor went to that last year. And so we have people who are getting professional development as well in some of those areas so that we can build some of the academic practices
Middle
onto
school and
those.
high school and administrators have
So,
been to trauma
and
informed
do you
counseling.
think that is one of the things that might improve?
Oh, no question.
And how long will that take?
It depends on if we can do enough intervention to stop the flow. Because I'm not sure, I don't see society or culture slowing that process down, and now we gotta just fix what happened. I see that trend continuing to multiply. And so that's one of the issues we really have to deal with is social, emotional, self-esteem issues have now impeded schools so badly that it's affected academic performance, and doesn't seem like there's a slowdown on that.
I know
It's
that
going to
there's
become a
several
part of our
curriculums.
normal business, where it used to be students who were behaving that way were not the norm. Now it's becoming more norm than not norm.
I do know that, and I know that something like 20% of the general population has mental health issues, which is huge. And so you're talking about parents who have those issues, and then they have their children that are anxious about their parents. So, I mean, all of that adds to the difficulties in the classroom. But I still think that there's something more that can happen. And I do know also that there are curriculums for very young, starting in kindergarten, for teachers to work with self-esteem, to work with mental health. And I think that it's probably very much the same as the sex education kind of curriculum in certain ways. But I do know that there and other states have started to implement them. And I also know that there was one in England also that was that's been successful.
One of the things you need to be cognizant of is the more instruction we have to pile on, the more standards we teach, the more emotional stuff we have to do, it's time on task.
Yeah,
and so do we need to increase time on task? And that's why I'm kind of glad you're here, because we've had this discussion, because I've been over to their place and we've talked about time on task.
Well, and
smaller schools, smaller numbers, those are all possibilities. But it costs more money to have a small school, a bunch of small schools, than one large school. So it's a financial issue also.
Or you can even start breaking up the schools on the same campus so that they are separate schools. But
we've actually done that at Bechtel, at our middle school.
And how does that work for you?
Much better. It's much more effective.
Yeah. So,
but it's still 100 students per grade level.
But Josephine, they do have social emotional curriculum that they use at the elementary schools. It's just part of the daily way everything.
This was very specifically to mental health, what I was talking about. Yeah. Anyhow, that was my general comment. It's very late. Sorry that I took up quite so much time. But I just wanted to express my strong feeling of being very upset.
Yeah. So are we.
And I would assume so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine.
I'm just here.
You just here?
Yeah.
Well, at least introduce yourself, remind them who you are.
Hello, board. I am Charlene Bretter again. I'm the new director at the Willits Elementary Charter School, and we are submitting our report for you for December, so I'll be back again next month.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
And I asked her if she really liked board meetings or something.
I'm addicted.
You must really like board meetings.
Did they put something in your contract new or something? No, we appreciate you coming. Now you're forcing me to return the favor where I have to come to York.
Yeah, right?
I don't have to record those, do I?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can come to.
On slow motion.
I believe we've reached that point in the meeting where we could call for a motion to adjourn.
And before we do, we are December 2nd, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still
Alex,
waiting
will
on
you-
that motion.
Oh, I'll move.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.